April 16th, 1945, 8:42 hours. Radar Picket Station 1, 20 miles north of Okinawa. The sea is calm enough to be deceptive. Gray Pacific swells roll slowly beneath the hull of the destroyer USS Laffey, their rhythm steady, almost peaceful. Salt wind pushes across the deck guns. Sailors lean against railings, scanning the sky with tired eyes. They have been here too long. Radar picket duty means one thing. You are the first target. On the bridge, Commander Frederick J. Becton watches the horizon through binoculars. His destroyer is small compared to carriers far behind him. Only 2,100 tons of steel, standing between the American fleet and whatever the Japanese send. His radar operator suddenly stiffens. Contact. Multiple aircraft. Bearing 320. The words hang in the air. Everyone on the bridge understands what that means now. The war has entered its final phase. Japan is running out of ships, running out of pilots, running out of options, but they still have planes. And those planes are no longer trying to survive. They are trying to die. Below the bridge, the radar scopes glow in dim light. Green lines sweep across the circular screens again and again. Each rotation paints the same picture. Blips, more blips. The operator counts them again, just to be certain. Bogies 20 miles out, closing fast. Commander Becton lowers his binoculars. General quarters. The alarm screams across the destroyer instantly. Klaxons howl through every compartment. Boots slam across steel decks as sailors rush to battle stations they have practiced for months. The calm Pacific morning vanishes. Now the ship is alive. Gun crews slide into position behind 5-inch dual-purpose cannons. Ammunition handlers lift shells weighing nearly 70 pounds from storage racks. The heavy rounds clang against metal loading trays. Below deck, engines roar harder as the destroyer accelerates. USS Laffey begins to move, not away from the threat, toward it, because radar picket ships cannot run. They must stand between the incoming aircraft and the fleet behind them. Their job is simple. Detect the attackers early. Shoot down as many as possible, and absorb the rest. On the forward deck, Seaman First Class Charles Sweeney wipes sweat from his hands, even though the morning air is cool. His 20mm Oerlikon gun points toward the northern sky. He has heard the stories. Kamikaze, planes diving straight into ships. Pilots who do not pull up. Sweeney adjusts the sight ring again. Someone beside him mutters quietly, "Here they come." High above the horizon, the first black specks appear against the pale sky. At first they look harmless, just distant aircraft. But the radar operator already knows what they are. Japanese fighters and bombers flying from Kyushu. Many are obsolete models, some barely able to stay airborne. That no longer matters. Every one of them carries a bomb. Every one of them carries a pilot who has already written his farewell letter. Commander Becton studies the approaching formation through binoculars. He counts at least 20, maybe more. Open fire when in range. The destroyer's gun directors begin tracking automatically. Radar-assisted targeting systems swivel the 5-inch guns with mechanical precision. The aircraft grow larger, faster. Now their shapes are visible. Aichi D-3 Edai bombers. Nakajima Ki 43 fighters. Some flying low over the waves. Others climbing for attack altitude. And none of them are turning away. Range 12,000 yards. A gunnery officer calls. The first American shells roar into sky. The 5-inch guns explode in thunderous bursts, their recoil slamming backward as orange fire flashes from the barrels. Shells streak upward and burst into black flak clouds. The peaceful sky turns violent. Explosions blossom around the incoming planes. One Japanese aircraft flies straight through the flak pattern without changing course. Closer, closer still. The 20mm guns open fire now, their rapid burst stitching bright tracer lines through the air. Sweeney squeezes the trigger. His Oerlikon gun vibrates violently as dozens of rounds tear toward the incoming plane. The pilot keeps coming. The aircraft grows larger in the gun sight. The nose dips. For a moment, Sweeney sees the cockpit clearly. The pilot inside is not maneuvering. He is staring straight ahead, committed. The plane bursts into flames under the storm of gunfire, but it does not pull up It keeps diving. Someone screams over the intercom. Impact incoming. The burning aircraft crashes directly into the aft gun mount. The explosion tears across the destroyer's deck like a violent wave. Fire erupts instantly. Metal fragments scream through the air. Sweeney is thrown backward by the blast, and the attack has barely begun, because the radar scope still shows dozens of blips closing fast. Commander Becton looks out across the sky again. What he sees next chills even the veterans on the bridge. More planes are coming, many more, and they are diving straight toward USS Laffey. April 16, 1945, 8:47 hours. Radar Picket Station 1, north of Okinawa. Smoke rolls across the deck of USS Laffey like a living thing. The first Kamikaze strike has ripped open the aft section of the destroyer. Twisted steel plates glow from heat. Burning aviation fuel spills across the deck, spreading flames around shattered gun mounts. But the ship is still moving. Commander Frederick Becton steadies himself against the bridge railing as the vessel shudders beneath him. The impact had felt like being struck by a freight train. For half a second there had been silence. Now the destroyer roars with chaos. Damage report. Becton shouts. The response crackles through the intercom. Voices strained but controlled. Aft gun mount hit heavy casualties. Fire on the fantail. Power still operational. Becton exhales slowly. They are hurt, but they are still alive. Then the radar operator turns toward him again. His voice sounds tight. Sir, more aircraft incoming. Becton already knows. He can see them. The sky to the north is now filled with dark silhouettes. Some fly low over the waves. Others dive steeply out of the sun. Too many to count quickly. These are not scattered attackers. This is a full strike wave. The destroyer's anti-aircraft guns roar back to life. 5-inch cannons hammer upward, launching timed shells that burst into violent black clouds across the sky. 40mm Bofors guns rattle in rhythmic thunder. 20mm cannons spit bright tracer fire that streaks toward the diving aircraft. The air around USS Laffey becomes a storm of explosions, and still they come. One Japanese fighter suddenly appears just above the mast, screaming downward in a steep dive. The pilot does not try to evade. He does not fire. He simply points the aircraft directly at the ship. Port side, someone yells. The Bofors gun crew swings their weapon toward the threat. The heavy cannon fires in rapid bursts, shells punching holes through the incoming aircraft. The fighter disintegrates, but its burning wreckage continues forward. The flaming fuselage slams into the deck beside the number 3 gun mount. The explosion shakes the destroyer again. Metal fragments whip across the deck like shrapnel from a grenade. Another fire erupts. The smell of burning gasoline mixes with cordite and salt air. Below deck, sailors rush through narrow corridors carrying fire hoses. Steam fills the passageways as water crashes against burning metal. The ship is becoming an inferno. On the starboard side, Seaman Charles Sweeney drags himself back to his feet. His ears are ringing from the first explosion. His gun shield is dented and scorched, but the Oerlikon cannon still works. He grips the firing handles again and looks up. The sky seems alive now. Aircraft dive from every direction. One bomber suddenly bursts through a flak curtain and drops a bomb directly toward the destroyer. The projectile tumbles end over end. For a split second, everyone watches it fall. The bomb strikes the deck near the bridge. The blast is monstrous. The explosion lifts sailors off their feet and tears through communication lines. Windows shatter across the bridge. Commander Becton feels the shock wave slam into his chest. Dust and smoke fill the air, but the destroyer does not stop firing. Even as flames climb the superstructure, the remaining guns keep shooting. Another Kamikaze appears low on the horizon, racing just above the water. This one is different, faster. It approaches from behind the destroyer's stern where the earlier explosions have weakened the defenses. Gun crews struggle to rotate their weapons quickly enough. Coming in aft, a lookout screams. The aircraft rises suddenly, clearing the wake of the ship. Then it dives. The plane slams directly into the base of the destroyer's rear mast. The explosion tears apart radar antennas and communication wires. Burning debris rains down across the deck. For a moment, the entire ship disappears inside a tower of smoke. Men stumble through the wreckage, coughing and half-blinded. Some never stand up again. The medical teams begin dragging wounded sailors toward the interior compartments where emergency aid stations have been set up. But there is barely time. Another aircraft screams down from the clouds. Then another, and another. Commander Becton stares out across the sky in disbelief. The destroyer has already taken multiple direct hits. Fires rage across the deck. Casualties are mounting rapidly. Any normal ship would already be abandoning vessel. But USS Laffey continues to fight, because retreat is impossible. Behind them lies the massive American invasion fleet, supporting the Battle of Okinawa. Hundreds of ships, thousands of soldiers. If the Kamikazes break through here, the carriers and transports will become their next targets. The destroyer must hold, even if it means dying where it stands. Another lookout suddenly shouts from the mast platform, more aircraft coming from the east. Becton raises his binoculars again. His stomach tightens. A new formation of enemy planes is diving straight toward the battered destroyer. And this time, they are coming in even lower. April 16th, 1945, 8:51 hours. Radar Picket Station 1, north of Okinawa. The destroyer is burning. Thick black smoke coils upward from the shattered aft section of USS Laffey, twisting into the pale Pacific sky. Flames crawl across the deck like living creatures, feeding on spilled fuel and splintered wood. And still the guns fire. Commander Frederick Becton grips the edge of the bridge as the ship shudders beneath him. The air smells of smoke, burning oil, and hot metal. He forces himself to ignore it. Another aircraft is diving. Starboard side, the lookout shouts. The warning comes only seconds before the attack. A Japanese Aichi dive bomber appears in the sun, screaming downward toward the destroyer's forward guns. 5-inch batteries swing toward the target. The guns fire almost simultaneously. The sky erupts with flak. Explosive shells burst around the aircraft in violent black clouds. Pieces of metal rip through its wings. But the bomber continues its dive. Closer, closer. The 20mm cannons open up next. Their rapid-fire bursts stitch glowing tracer lines across the sky. Seaman Charles Sweeney squeezes the triggers of his Oerlikon gun until his hands ache. The aircraft shudders as rounds tear through the fuselage. The engine catches fire. For a moment, it seems the attack has failed. Then the burning bomber plunges straight into the deck. The impact is catastrophic. The plane smashes into the forward gun platform and explodes in a storm of metal fragments and burning gasoline. Flames roar across the bow. Several sailors disappear inside the fireball. Others are thrown violently across the deck. Sweeney slams against the steel bulkhead beside his gun mount. His helmet skids away across the deck. For a moment, he cannot hear anything except a dull ringing. Then the noise comes back all at once. Gunfire, explosions, men shouting orders. The destroyer is still under attack. "Get that fire out," someone screams. Damage control teams rush forward with hoses. Water blasts across the burning wreckage, sending clouds of steam into the air. But the flames refuse to die. The wreckage of the aircraft continues burning fiercely where it struck, and more enemy planes are already approaching. Another fighter suddenly appears at low altitude, racing toward the destroyer from the port side. The pilot flies so low his wingtips almost touch the water. The maneuver is deliberate. It keeps him beneath the worst of the anti-aircraft fire. Port side incoming. Bofors guns swing toward the threat. The heavy cannons thunder repeatedly, filling the air with explosive shells. The fighter jerks violently as rounds tear into its fuselage. But the pilot never pulls away. The aircraft climbs slightly as it reaches the destroyer's hull. Then it dives directly toward the center of the ship. Commander Becton sees the collision coming seconds before it happens. The Kamikaze slams into the deck beside the number 2 stack. The explosion rips through the superstructure. Flames shoot upward in a towering column of fire. The shock wave throws sailors off their feet across the deck. Even the bridge shudders violently. For a terrifying moment, the destroyer slows. Smoke pours through broken ventilation ducts. The ship seems ready to die, but the engines continue turning. Below deck, engineering crews fight desperately to keep the boilers running. Sweat pours down their faces as gauges tremble under the strain. If the engines stop now, the destroyer will drift helplessly while the kamikazes finish their work. That cannot happen. Above them, the battle continues. Another enemy bomber dives steeply toward the crippled ship. This time the attack comes almost unnoticed through the smoke. The plane appears suddenly out of the haze. A bomb releases from its belly. The heavy projectile falls straight toward the deck. Sailors scatter. The bomb strikes near the starboard side gun battery. The explosion shakes the destroyer with brutal force. Steel plating bends outward. Fragments tear through gun crews and signal equipment. Fire erupts again. Now flames burn in multiple places across the ship. Medical teams rush between the wounded, dragging sailors toward makeshift treatment stations inside the hull. The number of casualties is rising quickly, but USS Laffey still refuses to stop fighting. Commander Becton wipes smoke from his eyes and studies the sky again through his binoculars. The destroyer has already survived several kamikaze hits, multiple bombs, dozens of near misses. No ship should still be afloat after this punishment, yet the destroyer continues firing. The remaining guns thunder upward into the sky, tracer fire streaks in every direction, and through the smoke, Becton sees something that makes his chest tighten. More aircraft are approaching. Not 2, not 3, an entire formation. At least 10 more Japanese planes are racing toward the crippled destroyer. They are spreading out for attack, preparing to strike from every direction at once. Commander Becton lowers the binoculars slowly. Around him, the crew continues fighting fires and loading ammunition with desperate determination. The ship is wounded. The deck is burning. But the men of USS Laffey are still standing, because the next wave of kamikazes is already diving, and this time they may finally finish the job. April 16, 1945, 8:55 hours. Radar Picket Station 1, north of Okinawa. The sky has become a battlefield. Smoke from the burning destroyer rises hundreds of feet into the air, forming a black column that can be seen for miles across the Pacific. Flames twist through the shattered structures of USS Laffey, crawling across twisted railings and shattered gun mounts. But the ship is still moving. Commander Frederick Becton wipes soot from his eyes and raises his binoculars again. The next wave is already descending. 10 aircraft spread across the sky like hunting birds. Some approach low over the ocean, their engines screaming as they skim across the waves. Others dive steeply through the rising smoke, using the burning destroyer itself as concealment. They are coordinated, deliberate, and determined to finish the job. Multiple attackers, a lookout shouts. The warning echoes across the battered deck. Gun crews scramble to track the incoming planes. Ammunition handlers race between damaged mounts carrying heavy shells through smoke and heat. Some men are barefoot now, their shoes burned away by fuel fires. The destroyer's 5-inch guns thunder again. Shells blast upward into the sky, exploding into thick black bursts around the diving aircraft. Shrapnel tears through the air, ripping wings and fuselages apart. One Japanese fighter bursts into flames almost immediately. Its wing snaps off. The aircraft tumbles downward into the ocean in a spiral of fire. But the others keep coming. A bomber plunges through the flak curtain directly toward the forward section of the ship. The Bofors guns swing upward and fire. Explosive shells slam into the aircraft's engine. The nose erupts in flames. Still the pilot does not pull away. The burning plane crashes into the sea only yards from the bow. A massive column of water and fire erupts upward, soaking the forward deck in burning fuel. Sailors duck behind gun shields as flaming debris rains down around them. Another plane screams toward the destroyer from the port side. This one is fast. Too fast. The 20mm guns open fire, their rapid bursts stitching glowing tracer lines through the smoke. Rounds strike the aircraft repeatedly. The wing begins to tear apart, but momentum carries it forward. The Kamikaze slams into the destroyer's starboard side, just below the bridge. The explosion detonates with terrifying force. Steel fragments whip across the deck. Communication wires snap like threads. The blast punches a hole into the side of the ship, sending flames roaring upward along the superstructure. Commander Becton is thrown sideways against the bridge wall. For a moment, the world spins. When he stands again, the situation is worse than before. Fires burn in at least 6 separate locations. Smoke pours through broken compartments. Casualty reports arrive continuously through damaged radio lines. Yet the destroyer refuses to die. Below deck, damage control teams are fighting like men possessed. Sailors drag hoses through narrow passageways, while others slam shut flooding valves. The roar of steam fills the compartments as ruptured pipes release boiling water. One team struggles to seal a ruptured bulkhead, where seawater has begun pouring inside. If that compartment floods completely, the ship could lose balance. And if the destroyer lifts too far, the guns above deck will become useless. On the surface, the battle continues. Another Japanese aircraft emerges suddenly from a smoke cloud. It approaches from behind the destroyer. Low, silent, the pilot has chosen his moment carefully. Many of the ship's guns are already firing toward the front of the attack wave. For a few seconds, this aircraft goes unnoticed. Then a sailor on the aft deck spots it, playing behind us. The shout comes too late. The aircraft rises over the stern and dives straight toward the rear gun mount. The Bofors gunners swing their cannon desperately. They fire a burst just as the plane reaches the ship. The shells strike the cockpit. The pilot dies instantly, but gravity continues the attack. The aircraft crashes directly into the gun mount. The explosion is devastating. The entire position disappears in a blinding flash. Shattered metal rains across the deck as the destroyer shudders violently again. Another gun has been silenced. Smoke thickens across the ship. The once gray destroyer is now scarred, burning, and barely recognizable beneath layers of soot and flame. And yet, unbelievably, several guns are still operational. The remaining crews continue firing at every aircraft that approaches. Their ammunition stocks are running dangerously low, but the sky is finally beginning to clear. Most of the kamikazes have already attacked. Many have been destroyed. Others crashed into the sea. The surviving aircraft break away toward the horizon. For the first time in nearly 15 minutes, the sky grows quieter. Commander Becton lowers his binoculars slowly. Around him, the destroyer burns like a floating furnace. Bodies lie across the deck. Gun mounts are twisted wreckage. Communication lines hang uselessly from shattered masts. The ship should not still be afloat. But USS Laffey continues pushing forward through the waves. And then the radar operator turns toward the bridge. His face is pale. "Sir, new contacts." Becton stares at him. "How many?" The operator swallows. "At least 8 aircraft approaching fast." Becton turns back toward the horizon. Through the drifting smoke, he sees the distant shapes already forming. Another wave of kamikazes, heading straight for the wounded destroyer. And this time, the guns are running out of ammunition. April 16, 1945, 8:59 hours. Radar Picket Station 1 north of Okinawa. The fires are spreading. Across the battered deck of USS Laffey, flames crawl over shattered gun mounts and twisted railings. Smoke pours through broken compartments and rises into the sky in a thick black column that marks the destroyer's position for miles. The ship should be dead. By every measure of naval warfare, no destroyer could endure this much punishment and remain afloat. 6 kamikaze strikes have already torn into the hull and superstructure. Bombs have exploded across the deck. Fires burn in nearly every section. And still the engines turn. Commander Frederick Becton stands on the shattered bridge with binoculars pressed his eyes. The radar operator was not mistaken. More aircraft are coming. 8 Japanese planes approach low over the water, their dark shapes skimming across the waves toward the crippled destroyer. They spread apart as they advance, forming a loose semicircle that threatens to strike from multiple directions at once. Becton exhales slowly. Ammunition status? The gunnery officer answers without hesitation, running low on 5-inch shells. Bofors still active, 20-millimeter guns nearly empty. Becton nods. The destroyer has been firing almost continuously for over 15 minutes. Shell racks that once held hundreds of rounds are now nearly empty. But the guns must keep firing, because there is nowhere else for these kamikazes to go. Behind USS Laffey lies the massive American invasion fleet supporting the Okinawa landings. Aircraft carriers, troop transports, hospital ships, thousands of lives. If the Kamikaze slip past this picket line, those ships will become the next targets. So the destroyer holds its ground. On the port side, Seaman Charles Sweeney reloads the last ammunition drum into his Oerlikon cannon. His hands tremble from exhaustion and adrenaline. He has lost count of how many aircraft he has fired at. All he knows is that more are coming. The first plane suddenly climbs from the surface of the ocean. It is a fighter, fast. The aircraft rises sharply and dives toward the bow of the destroyer. The remaining 5-inch gun fires. The shell bursts directly in front of the aircraft. Shrapnel tears through the wings. The plane spirals downward and crashes into the sea. One less, but the others keep coming. Another bomber dives through the smoke toward the center of the ship. The Bofors guns open fire, their heavy shells striking the fuselage repeatedly. The aircraft bursts into flames. For a moment, it appears the attack has failed. Then the burning plane continues forward. The Kamikaze crashes directly into the water beside the hull. The explosion sends a towering wave over the deck. Burning fuel splashes across already smoldering wreckage. Flames spread again. Another aircraft appears through the smoke. This one is lower than the others. So low its propeller almost touches the ocean surface. The pilot suddenly pulls upward as he reaches the destroyer's stern. The maneuver catches the gunners by surprise. Before the cannons can swing into position, the aircraft climbs sharply above the ship. Then it dives. The Kamikaze slams into the deck beside the number 3 stack. The explosion rips open the already damaged superstructure. Metal fragments scream through the air. The blast knocks several sailors off their feet. Even the bridge shakes violently again. Commander Becton grips the railing as smoke floods around him. Report. More fires on the midship deck. Medical station overwhelmed. Power still holding. Becton closes his eyes briefly. The destroyer is dying piece by piece. Yet somehow it refuses to sink. Below deck, damage control teams are working in conditions that feel like the inside of a furnace. Steam pours through ruptured pipes. Water sloshes across steel floors as hoses blast burning compartments. Sailors fight fires with whatever equipment still functions. Some are badly burned. Others refuse medical attention because there is no one else left to replace them. Every man understands the same truth. If the destroyer stops fighting now, everyone on board will die. Above them, the battle continues. The final Kamikaze of the wave suddenly appears through the smoke cloud above the ship. This one is diving steeply, straight toward the bridge. For a brief moment, Commander Becton can see the aircraft clearly. The cockpit canopy flashes in the sunlight. Inside sits the Japanese pilot, hands locked firmly on the controls. He is not attempting to evade. He is not afraid. He is simply finishing his mission. "Bridge incoming," someone shouts. The remaining Bofors gun fires a desperate burst. Shells rip through the aircraft's wing. The plane shudders violently, but it does not pull away. The Kamikaze slams into the deck, only yards from the bridge. The explosion detonates with deafening force. Flames explode upward. The blast knocks men across the bridge floor and shatters what remains of the windows. For several seconds, the destroyer disappears inside a massive cloud of smoke and fire. When the smoke begins to clear, the situation becomes terrifyingly clear. Most of the ship's guns are now silent. The deck is burning from bow to stern. Casualties are everywhere. USS Laffey is barely alive. And yet, unbelievably, the engines are still running. The ship is still moving forward through the waves. But far out on the horizon, another formation of aircraft is already approaching. Not kamikazes this time. Something larger. And what appears in the sky next will decide whether the battered destroyer survives the day. April 16th, 1945, 9:05 hours. Radar Picket Station 1, north of Okinawa. The destroyer is barely recognizable. What was once the clean gray silhouette of USS Laffey is now a scorched skeleton drifting through smoke and flame. Fires burn across the superstructure. Twisted antenna, wires hang from the shattered mast. Entire gun mounts have been ripped open by explosions. And yet, the ship is still moving. Commander Frederick Becton slowly pushes himself upright on the damaged bridge. His uniform is streaked with soot and salt water. The binoculars in his hands are scratched and fogged from the blast of the last kamikaze strike. For a moment, the sky is strangely quiet. The roar of anti-aircraft guns has faded. Only the crackling of fire and the groan of damaged steel fill the air. Across the deck, sailors move through smoke, carrying the wounded toward emergency aid stations below deck. Some men limp. Others are carried on makeshift stretchers built from torn canvas and broken rails. Medical teams work with frightening speed. There are too many casualties. Commander Becton looks toward the radar operator. Status. The operator studies the flickering scope carefully. The green line sweeps across the screen again and again. Finally, he exhales. No new kamikaze contacts. For the first time in nearly 20 minutes, the destroyer is not under immediate attack, but the relief lasts only seconds. Another sailor points toward the eastern sky. Aircraft approaching. Every man on the bridge stiffens instantly. More enemy planes? Becton raises his binoculars again. At first, the distant shapes are difficult to identify through the drifting smoke. They move quickly, flying in tight formation across the morning sky. Then sunlight catches their wings. The aircraft are larger than the kamikazes. Twin engines, long wings, and painted in a familiar shade of American Navy blue. Friendly fighters, Becton says quietly. The aircraft roar closer. They are F-4U Corsairs from nearby escort carriers supporting the Okinawa invasion fleet. Their distinctive bent wings flash in the sunlight as they sweep across the sky above the battered destroyer. The pilots immediately see the burning ship below, and they see something else. More Japanese aircraft approaching from the north. These are not kamikazes diving alone. They are escort fighters and bombers attempting to strike the radar picket line while the destroyer is crippled. But now the Corsairs are here. The American fighters dive aggressively toward the incoming formation. Machine guns flash from their wings. Tracer fire streaks across the sky. The first Japanese aircraft explodes in midair as heavy rounds tear through its engine. Another fighter tries to evade. A Corsair slides behind it effortlessly. A short burst. The enemy aircraft spirals downward, trailing black smoke. From the deck of USS Laffey, sailors watch the battle unfolding above them. The sky has become a swirling dogfight. American fighters twist and climb between clouds, while Japanese aircraft attempt to reach the wounded destroyer below. But the Corsairs are faster, better armed, and their pilots are experienced veterans of the Pacific War. One Japanese bomber breaks through the fighter screen and dives toward the burning destroyer. The remaining anti-aircraft guns on Laffey respond instantly. The Bofors cannon fires again. The shells strike the aircraft's wing. The bomber rolls sideways and crashes into the ocean before it can release its payload. The sailors on deck cheer weakly. But the battle overhead continues. Corsairs tear through the remaining Japanese formation with ruthless efficiency. Machine guns hammer repeatedly as American pilots chase their targets across the sky. One by one, the enemy aircraft fall. Some explode in flames. Others dive desperately toward the sea. Within minutes, the sky begins to clear. The last surviving Japanese plane turns away toward the distant horizon. The American fighters pursue briefly. Then they circle back toward the destroyer below. Several Corsairs dip their wings as they pass over the battered ship, a silent acknowledgement. They can see the devastation clearly. The deck is a patchwork of burning wreckage and shattered steel. Entire sections of the ship are blackened by fire. Gun mounts lie twisted where kamikaze aircraft slammed into them, and yet the destroyer is still afloat, still moving through the water. Commander Becton lowers his binoculars slowly. Around him, the crew continues fighting fires and rescuing wounded sailors from damaged compartments. The attack has lasted less than half an hour, but the cost has been enormous. Dozens of men are dead, many more are wounded, and the ship itself looks as though it should have sunk long ago. Yet USS Laffey refuses to die. Suddenly a voice crackles through the damaged radio equipment on the bridge. "Laffey, this is Destroyer Escort Shannon. We are approaching your position." Another transmission follows. Rescue ships inbound. Becton listens silently. Help is finally coming. But as he looks across the battered deck, he understands something clearly. Even with rescue ships nearby, The destroyer still faces a dangerous battle because the fires are spreading again, and deep inside the damaged hull, seawater is beginning to rise. April 16, 1945, 9:18 hours. Radar Picket Station 1, north of Okinawa. The battle in the sky is over. Now the fight moves inside the ship. USS Laffey drifts forward to the gray Pacific. Smoke still pouring from multiple sections of the deck. Fires burn stubbornly across the wreckage of smashed gun mounts and shattered aircraft debris. But the greater danger is no longer above. It is below, deep inside the hull. Seawater is pouring through ruptured plating where Kamikaze impacts tore open the ship's side. Damage control crews struggle through dim corridors filled with smoke and steam. Boots splash through rising water. Metal groans under pressure. The destroyer is slowly flooding. Chief Machinist Mate Robert Langley crouches beside a ruptured pipe in the engineering compartment. The heat here is unbearable. Boilers roar only yards away, and ruptured steam lines have filled the air with scalding vapor. Langley wipes sweat from his eyes and shouts over the noise. "Get that pump running." Two sailors wrestle with a portable pump unit, trying to drag it across the slick steel floor. Water already reaches their ankles. If the flooding spreads much further, the engines themselves could be threatened. And if the engines fail, USS Laffey will stop moving. That cannot happen, because damaged ships sitting still become easy targets. Above them on the deck, the crew continues battling the fires left by the Kamikaze strikes. Damage control parties drag heavy hoses across twisted wreckage, while others shovel debris over the side of the ship. Everywhere there are scars from the attack. Blackened metal, burned equipment, fragments of aircraft embedded in the deck like jagged knives. Near the shattered No. 3 stack, sailors finally manage to extinguish one of the larger fires. Steam hisses upward as water floods the smoldering wreckage. One sailor stares silently at the twisted remains of the gun mount beside him. Only 30 minutes earlier, that gun had been firing into the sky. Now it is nothing but melted steel. Commander Frederick Becton steps carefully across the damaged bridge. The windows are gone. The railing is bent inward where the last Kamikaze struck nearby. Through the drifting smoke, he can see the ocean stretching away toward the horizon and approaching fast. 3 American ships. Destroyer escorts racing toward the battered radar picket station. Their gray hulls cut through the waves at high speed. The first vessel signals with flashing lights. "We are coming alongside." Becton nods to the signalman. "Respond. Request firefighting assistance." The signal lamp blinks rapidly through the smoke. Within minutes, the rescue ships close the distance. The destroyer escort Shannon reaches Laffey first. Sailors on her deck stare in disbelief at the sight before them. The destroyer looks like a wreck that should already be resting on the ocean floor. Large sections of the deck are burned black. Gun turrets are destroyed. Pieces of aircraft are still wedged into the hull, where Kamikazes crashed moments earlier, and yet the ship is still afloat, still moving, still fighting to survive. Shannon maneuvers carefully alongside the crippled destroyer. Fire hoses arc across the gap between the ships. Powerful streams of seawater blast onto Laffey's burning deck. More hoses follow from the second rescue ship, arriving behind them. Soon several firefighting lines are pouring water across the wreckage. Slowly, painfully slowly, the flames begin to weaken. Inside the hull, Langley and his engineering crew finally manage to activate the portable pump. The machine sputters for a moment. Then it roars to life. Water begins draining from the flooded compartment. The sailors exchange exhausted glances. It is working. The flooding is slowing. For the first time since the attack began, the destroyer might actually survive. Above them on the deck, medical teams continue treating the wounded. Sailors lie on stretchers beneath improvised shade coverings, while corpsmen move quickly from one man to the next. Bandages, morphine, whatever treatment can be given at sea. The casualty count is grim. Dozens of men killed, many more injured, but the ship itself refuses to give up. By 9:40 hours, most of the fires are finally under control. Smoke still rises from blackened wreckage, but the towering flames that once threatened to consume the destroyer have faded. Commander Becton stands at the edge of the bridge and looks across the battered deck. His ship has endured something almost unimaginable. 6 direct kamikaze impacts for bomb explosions, continuous attack by more than 20 enemy aircraft. No destroyer was designed to survive that kind of punishment. Yet USS Laffey still floats, still moves, still breathes. But as Becton watches the damage control crews continue their desperate work, he realizes something else. The battle for survival is not finished, because although the fires are nearly out and the flooding is slowing, the destroyer has one more test ahead, and it will determine whether the ship that refused to die can make it home. April 16, 1945, 10:02 hours, north of Okinawa, Pacific Ocean. The worst of the flames are finally dying. Across the scarred deck of USS Laffey, thick smoke still curls from blackened steel and shattered equipment. The once proud destroyer now looks like the aftermath of a shipwreck. Entire gun mounts have been reduced to twisted skeletons of metal. Burn marks stretch across the superstructure like deep scars. Yet the ship is still alive. Water continues spraying across smoldering wreckage as firefighters from nearby escort vessels battle the last stubborn flames. Powerful hoses roar over the rails, washing away burning fuel and cooling steel that glows faintly from heat. Commander Frederick Becton stands silently on the battered bridge. The attack that nearly destroyed his ship has lasted less than 30 minutes, but the damage feels like the result of days of battle. All around him, sailors move through the wreckage with slow, exhausted determination. Some carry stretchers toward the rescue ships that have come alongside. Others gather ammunition that never had the chance to be fired. Many of the men are blackened with soot. Some have bandages wrapped around arms and faces. But they're still working, still refusing to stop below deck. The engineering teams continue fighting the flooding that threatens the destroyer's stability. Pumps roar inside narrow compartments where seawater still seeps through damaged seams in the hull. Chief Machinist Mate Robert Langley wipes sweat from his face and studies the gauges beside the portable pump. The water level is dropping. Slowly, painfully slowly, but it is dropping. "Keep it running," he tells the exhausted sailors beside him. If the pump fails now, the destroyer could still sink. And no one on this ship is ready to give up after everything they have survived. Above them, rescue crews from nearby destroyer escorts help transfer the most seriously wounded sailors across narrow lines stretched between the ships. The ocean swells gently beneath the vessels as stretcher teams move carefully across the gap. One wrong step could drop a wounded man into the sea, but the sailors move with steady hands. They know every second matters. On the deck of USS Laffey, Seaman Charles Sweeney sits beside his damaged Oerlikon gun. The metal shield around the cannon is bent and scarred by fragments. Empty ammunition drums lie scattered across the deck around him. For the first time since the attack began, his hands have stopped shaking. He stares out across the ocean. The sky above Okinawa is calm again. No enemy aircraft, no explosions, only drifting smoke and the distant rumble of naval guns supporting the battle on the island. A sailor walks past him carrying a damaged helmet. Sweeney recognizes it instantly. It belonged to one of the gunners who had stood beside him earlier that morning. He looks away. Across the ship, the full scale of the destruction becomes clearer as the smoke slowly thins. 6 aircraft wrecks lie scattered across the deck, where Kamikaze struck the destroyer directly. Their twisted engines and shattered wings are still embedded in the steel. Nearby, for bomb craters mark the places where explosive charges tore into the ship's structure. Entire communication systems have been destroyed. Radar antennas lie broken across the deck. Several gun mounts are gone completely. Yet somehow the hull has held. Commander Becton studies the horizon again through scratched binoculars. More American ships are approaching now. Tugboats and additional destroyers sent to escort the battered vessel away from the dangerous radar picket line. The order soon arrives through the damaged radio system. USS Laffey is to withdraw from the station. Slowly, carefully, under escort, the destroyer begins turning south toward the larger American fleet gathering around Okinawa. Its movement is sluggish. The engines strain against damaged machinery, and the weight of water still trapped inside parts of the hull. But the ship moves. It moves. Sailors along the rail watch silently as the radar picket station disappears behind them. Only an hour earlier, this place had been a battlefield filled with aircraft and explosions. Now it is empty ocean. Commander Becton lowers his binoculars one last time. He looks across the deck at the men who remain. Many of the crew who began the morning with him are gone, killed during the Kamikaze attack. Others lie wounded aboard rescue ships now heading toward hospital vessels waiting offshore. But the ship itself has survived, against every expectation, against every law of naval warfare. USS Laffey has endured 6 kamikaze impacts for heavy bombs, more than 20 attacking aircraft. Any one of those strikes could have been fatal, yet the destroyer refused to sink. The sailors aboard her refused to abandon her, and together they carried the ship through the most violent half-hour of her existence. In the years after the war, historians would struggle to describe what happened on this morning off Okinawa. Some called it the fiercest destroyer battle of the Pacific War. Others simply called the ship by the name her crew had already given her, the ship that would not die. And on that burning morning, in April 1945, she proved it.